Are you the kind of person who likes bubbles, flowers, chocolates for your Valentine's gift, or something handmade that feels extra special and thoughtful? Today I'm going to show you how to engrave a slate, similar to this one but quite a lot bigger, that you could use as something like a cheese board or just a pretty sign to decorate your home. So if you'd like to make a thoughtful gift for Valentine's Day or Mother's Day or something just extra special, then let's have a look.
It's always helpful to do a test on the same material before you start your final project so you can check what settings to put into your laser engraver. I'm going to do my test on this slate coaster, and to start I'm going to mark it off into 4 squares and a base coat to test how it engraves best, and also which base coat, if any, looks best with the engraving on top. I made a simple cardboard cutout so that I could spray 2 of the corners, one with black spray paint, another with a clear coat sealer. The third corner I used mineral oil, and the fourth corner I left plain. While those squares were drying, it was time to create the test grid in the XCS software, which is Xtools software for laser engraving. Essentially what I'm going to do is create a grid of different power and different speed settings. Each of the 4 backgrounds, the black paint, the sealer, mineral oil and plain, will have the exact same settings tested on top of them, so it's a fair comparison. A good place to start to work out what settings to test out is the Xtool material settings within the software itself. Secondly, if you check out the various Facebook groups for the M1 machine, people share their projects and say what settings they use. So I've been making note of what successful settings people have had. So all of these variations that I've put in as my test are things that should be successful. There shouldn't be any poor performances. It's simply a case of which looks the best on my exact slate, because all slate will react slightly differently, which is why you should do a test every time. For the power settings, I did variations between 10 and 20. For the speed, I went between 120 and 160. The result of the coaster test, you can see that the black paint in the top left and the sealer in the top right are quite similar. They make the engraving pop out a lot more. The mineral oil, while it didn't have much time to sink in, made it a lot more cloudy and dull. On to the fun bit, the design. Because this is a Valentine's heart, I've gone for some matching words or things that pair nicely together. Bacon and eggs, tea and biscuits, puddles and wellies. The nice thing about this is you could make this completely personalised to you. You could do your favourite coffee order, Big Mac and fries, Mickey and Minnie, anything you can think of. The flexibility of engraving is one of the nice things about it. I put these words together in Canva just because there were more typeface options than within XCS, and I went for a fairly easy to read typeface, but you could do something like handwriting, which would feel a bit more personal. And to make it just a little bit cuter, I added some images as well. With images, the simpler the better really, so I went with black and white and simple line drawings. In fact, these wellies I ended up changing because they just had too much detail in them, but I did do my test engrave with them so you can see how they turned out. Half the fun is choosing the style that you want to go for. I kept mine quite similar, simple shapes. You can't really see the different tone variations within grayscale. I played around with different images, different layouts. I added some hearts, I took some hearts away. It's a lot of fun playing around until you get the design that you're happy with. As I had a smaller heart slate that I could do some tests on, I decided to do some more tests with the wordings. When you bring the files into the software, that's when you can play around with the design. I was going to do a test slate in the shape of the heart, so I wanted the shape to be correct, but otherwise I was still working out the settings I was going to use. As the words and the images were in an SVG file, that meant they were all separate elements, so I could edit them quite easily with all different combinations. From bacon and eggs down to bucket and spade, I did different speed and power combinations again, just to give them another test. And it's not a wasted slate either, because if you have a test slate that you want to reuse, or even a design that is finished and you want to redo with something else, you can simply use 80 grit sandpaper to remove the finish on it, give it a good clean, and it's good as new. When you go to refresh the screen after you've made your design, it shows the camera view of what is in the machine. So once you put slate in, or your material in, you can see exactly how the design will look on top. From having this angle, I moved my heart slightly within the machine, as it wasn't perfectly straight, refreshed it again, and then had the perfect layout to work on. Some things I changed across the design. I moved the strawberries and cream up to be more in the middle. Because strawberries is such a long word, it was a bit more balanced. I removed the egg because I didn't think it added too much, and I changed the designs of the wellies to some that had less detail in them. As they were all different elements, I needed to line them up, so I made sure that the ampersands were in line and highlighted them to make sure that they were as even as possible. This smaller test slate probably took about 15 minutes to complete. Once you have a good idea of how it's turning out, you can even stop it. You don't have to go through the whole process, but I let it run through so I could get a good idea of how exactly all the different elements fit together. Other than the wellies, which I knew I was going to change the design of, the different settings of the words didn't create much variation. There was not a very obvious difference between most of the different word settings. They were all pretty decent. I would say the strawberries and bucket looked a little bit fainter than the others, so I didn't choose those. In fact, I went with the settings that were on bacon and eggs. But there wasn't a lot in it. They were all pretty good choices. As a final test, I added some mineral oil as a sealer over half of the heart. Mineral oil is good as a sealer because it makes it food safe. So if you wanted to make this like a cheese board, then it would be safe for the food on top of it. Obviously gives it a completely different look. It dulls the engraving quite a lot, but it also gives it a consistent finish. Slate absorbs oil quite easily, even just from touching it with my fingers, you can see that. So this mineral oil does avoid that problem by giving it an entire coat of oil. So it's a good option. This is my actual slate piece that I'm doing my project on. It's quite a lot larger. It's about a 30cm square. I do like the natural colour of the slate. However, because there's some inconsistencies in the colour, I'm going to spray paint it black first. Other than changing the wellies, this is pretty much good to go, just recreating it in a slightly larger size. The engraving took an hour to complete. And while you should always stay with your machine while it's working, just in case there are any problems, it doesn't have that immediate risk of cutting wood where it could start to char and burn. I really love how this has turned out. It is exactly what I was hoping for. It's got a simple look to it, but it's also really pretty, meaningful, and would look lovely on a kitchen counter with a few little nibbles displayed near it. I just love how versatile this project is. You could really put any message, anything personal or meaningful on it, and it would be a really lovely gift to receive. I feel like this works for Valentine's Day, Mother's Day, Father's Day. It's quite simple, it's fun to play around with, and looks great.
If you are still here, thank you so much for watching until now. I hope you found it helpful and got some ideas for something that you could create yourself. If you did find it helpful, please consider subscribing. It makes a huge difference to smaller channels like mine. or leave a comment saying what you would engrave on your own slate project. Thank you so much. Until next time, happy Valentine's Day. Bye.